So I remember all the way back in 2017, I covered a story that I thought was a huge deal, but it wasn't getting talked about much. This is the story right here, so it's in The Guardian. Trump's impending executive order heralds dangerous return to torture, official warns. So, in other words, Trump signed a pro-torture executive order, and this, of course, came on the heels of George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. They had Guantanamo Bay, they had Abu Ghraib, they took away people's rights, they ended up torturing what ended up being completely innocent people. This was a massive scandal. We had the pictures coming out of Abu Ghraib with U.S. service members sort of laughing while torturing innocent people. And it was viewed as like a disgusting stain on this country. And the world was absolutely outraged. And it was the beginning of the end of the downfall of even just the perception that we give a shit about international law and human rights and things of that nature. And remember, that's the story we tell ourselves. We suck ourselves off about how, we care about international law and human rights, and that's why we are the world's policemen, and we mean well, and we try our best. And that was the story. But it became clear at the time that's not true. Then Obama gets in there and he says, we look forward, we don't look backwards. So in other words, I'm not going to prosecute the war criminals and the torturers. I'm not going to prosecute the assholes on Wall Street who committed fraud, which led to millions of people losing their homes. We're not going to do it. And at that moment, what everybody realized, every astute political observer realized is, okay, well, now you just opened up the door to say torture is just a matter of opinion. It's no longer the law. It's no longer enforced. If the government decides to torture, there are no consequences for it. So Trump gets in there and he signs a pro-torture executive order. And I was hair on fire at the time about it. And guess what? Now we have more information that indeed torture is occurring. Get this, in NBC News. Kilmar Abrego Garcia suffered psychological and physical torture in El Salvador prison, attorneys say. At the notorious CCOT prison, he was forced to frog march and to kneel from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., and he was subjected to beatings and threats, his lawyer said Wednesday. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was stripped naked, had his head shaved, was beaten, forced to kneel for hours overnight, and lost over 30 pounds during his time at the notorious CCOT prison in El Salvador, his attorneys say in a new court filing. Abrego of Maryland was deported to El Salvador in March by the Trump administration in an administrative error and was returned to the U.S. in June to face federal charges. By the way, I should point out these federal charges are completely and utterly bogus, trumped-up nonsense. They're trying to do it to save face about the fact that they deported an innocent person and sent him to a concentration camp. At the time of his removal from the U.S., Abrego was protected from deportation by a 2019 court order. His high-profile case was pushed into the national spotlight, sparking a heated debate over Trump's immigration crackdown and the race to deport people at times without due process. Abrego was deported to El Salvador on March 15th and placed into CCOT, a mega prison known for its brutal conditions. There, he was allegedly subjected to severe beatings, sleep deprivation, inadequate nutrition, and psychological torture, his attorney said in an amended complaint filed Wednesday. That complaint is part of a federal lawsuit filed by Abrego's wife against the Trump administration in the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland. The complaint states that upon arrival at CCOT, Abrego was forced to strip, issued prison clothing, kicked in the legs with boots, and struck on his head and arms to change faster. His head was also allegedly shaved, and he was frog marched to a cell while being hit with wooden batons. The following day, he had visible bruises and lumps all over his body. In that cell, he and 20 other Salvadorians were forced to kneel from approximately 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., with guards striking anyone who fell from exhaustion. During that time, Abrego was denied bathroom access and soiled himself, according to the complaint. The inmates were confined to metal bunks with no mattresses in overcrowded cells with windows and bright lights that stayed on 24 hours a day. While there, prison officials repeatedly told Abrego that they would transfer him to cells containing gang members who they assured him would tear him apart. The attorney said Abrego observed prisoners violently harm each other without staff intervention. Quote, screams from nearby cells would similarly ring out throughout the night without any response from prison guards or personnel. In his first 2 weeks, he lost 31 pounds. On April 9th, the complaint says Abrego and 4 others were transferred to a different module in CCOT, but the next day he was transferred alone to the Centro Industrial Prison Facility in Santa Ana, El Salvador. Throughout his time in El Salvador, his lawyer said Abrego was denied any communications with his family and access to counsel until Senator Chris Van Hollen visited him on April 17th. Shout out to Chris Van Hollen, man. This was one of those stories that blew up and the media talked about it endlessly. The media did a great job discussing it. And then you had Democratic politicians actually step up and do some shit. This wasn't just performative. This was real. To go to El Salvador and demand to see this guy is real shit. The Supreme Court ruled in April that his removal was illegal and determined that a judge's order for the administration to facilitate his return was proper. Abrego was ultimately returned to the U.S. on June 6 following a contentious back and forth with the court and the Trump administration that raised concerns about the defiance of the judicial branch. By the way, understand something. What made Trump cave on this? It was the relentless pressure, the relentless coverage from the media, the fact that Democratic politicians kept going down there. This stayed in the news. It was top of mind. People kept talking about it. They kept saying, look how fascist Trump is. Look how insane he is. Look how authoritarian he is. Look how he's destroying this person's life. Look, this guy was totally innocent. And because of that relentless pressure, that's why he was brought back to the country. They still tried to save face by mucking up these bullshit charges, but he's back in the country. And the reality is, he's probably going to win those cases anyway, and so he'll be free to go. But, like, again, this goes to show you the theory has been proven. When the liberals and leftists and anybody of good conscience who's anti-Trump stands up and speaks out about the horrors of this regime and doesn't stop and does a full court press and goes on the offense and is relentless, that's how you get change. It is not by holding hands with MAGA and singing Kumbaya and pretending that there's more agreement than there actually is. That's a super, super important point. The government has repeatedly accused the 29-year-old of being involved with the gang MS-13, claims Abrego's family and attorneys have denied. His attorney says Abrego, who is from El Salvador, left the country when he was around 16 years old to flee gang violence. In 2011, Abrego entered the U.S. without inspection and stayed in Maryland, where his older brother, a U.S. citizen, lived, the complaint said. So he left El Salvador because he was afraid the gangs would kill him. And then he got deported back to El Salvador into a fucking slave labor concentration camp where the gangs run rampant. In the Wednesday filing, attorneys for Abrego family asked Judge Paul Azinis to rule that over the course of this entire ordeal, from the time he was picked up in that Maryland parking lot to when he was returned to the U.S., the government violated laws and his Fifth Amendment right to due process. They also want Abrego returned to Maryland and separately want a habeas corpus hearing held in Maryland. When Abrego returned last month, the Justice Department said he would face human smuggling charges in Tennessee. He is accused of transporting people not legally in the U.S. within the country. He allegedly participated in a conspiracy over 9 years to move people from Texas deeper into the country, including members of MS-13. Yeah, exactly. The gang he was fleeing from because he was afraid they would kill him. He actually ended up working for them the entire time. Abrego's wife, Jennifer Vasquez-Sura, has insisted that he was not involved in criminal activity. Kilmar worked in construction and sometimes transported groups of workers between job sites, so it's entirely plausible he would have been pulled over while driving with others in the vehicle, his wife previously said in a statement. He was not charged with any crime or cited for any wrongdoing at the time. The family's attorney, Chris Newman, previously said the Trump administration's efforts are part of a campaign of disinformation, defamation against Kilmar and his family. The federal judge presiding over Abrego's criminal case in Tennessee ordered the Trump administration Thursday to comply with local rules prohibiting out-of-court statements that could jeopardize Abrego's right to a fair trial. Abrego's lawyers had asked the court to stop the government from making extrajudicial statements about their client, saying from the moment Kilmar Abrego Garcia challenged his illegal rendition to El Salvador in March 2025, the government has repeatedly maligned him in public statements. Mr. Abrego is entitled to a fair trial by an impartial jury free from outside influence, but he is nearly certain to be denied that right if the government, left to its own devices, stays its current course. In other words, because of the Trump regime's relentless lies, relentless disinformation and misinformation and propaganda, dragging this guy's name through the mud, this guy's attorneys are going, how's he supposed to have a fair trial if they keep repeating every day on air, oh, he's MS-13, oh, he was human trafficking, oh, the other day on Fox, I'm not kidding, somebody said Kilmar murdered somebody. Bitch, what? There is zero evidence. That's not true. That's not remotely true. That's completely and utterly made up. Nobody's alleged that. What are you talking about? But this is what they do. They try to steer the narrative. They try to control the narrative. So this guy, let's be clear about this. This guy deserves millions of dollars in restitution for what was done to him. He was rotting in a concentration camp, not knowing if he was ever going to get out, ever. And by the way, let's also remember, what he's validating here is he was tortured by the Trump regime. The Trump regime contracted, I should say, with El Salvador. El Salvador did the dirty work and did the torture at the behest of the Trump regime. So let me ask you this. There were 288 people sent to the concentration camp in El Salvador. My guess is about 288 of them were tortured and are continually being tortured. Which means what? We have that poor kid who had a tattoo for his 15-year-old autistic brother on him. The government looked at that and said, oh, that means you're in a gang. It's a tattoo for his autistic brother who he helps out. The guy, sweet kid, and he was sent there. He's being tortured probably as we speak. Andres, the gay Venezuelan makeup artist, 19 years old, he was sent there. He had a mom and dad tattoo. The government goes, that proves you're in a gang. And they sent him to CCOT. He's still there. These people are still there innocent people are still there. 75 to 90% of the people sent to CCOT, zero criminal record whatsoever. 92% of all the ICE arrests are against people who are not violent criminals. I mean, we are witnessing the death of law and order in this country, the death of checks and balances, and the ushering in of fascism. That's what we're witnessing. And that's why you see all these thugs with fucking Nazi tattoos deputized into ICE. They're acting as Trump's Gestapo because they are Trump's Gestapo. And now you know what actually went down. The government are the criminals. The government are the criminals. ICE, the Gestapo, they are the criminals. Fucking the El Salvador government led by Bukele, criminals. They are criminals. They're the problem. They're the ones violating the law. They're the ones who need to be locked up. So now we're back to fucking law of the jungle, might makes right, torture's on the table, it's on the menu. Now we're back to that. And not many people are even talking about this. So I hope he gets millions of dollars in restitution. Free every single one of the 288 people who were sent to that fucking concentration camp. Free them. Free them. And all these ICE agents need to be locked up. All these ICE agents waiting outside of immigration hearings. Then a judge dismisses the immigration case. Then they arrest the person anyway. If you're doing that, you're a criminal. That's why the ICE Gestapo are covering their fucking faces. They know what they're doing is wildly illegal and wildly unconstitutional. There needs to be justice. We need new Nuremberg trials when all this is said and done. Stephen Miller needs to be locked up. Kristi Noem needs to be locked up. Donald Trump needs to be locked up. All the ICE foot soldiers, they need to be locked up. This is insanely un-American, what we're witnessing here. It's a new dark chapter in this country. An innocent man was arrested, sent to a concentration camp, and tortured. And he's the fucking lucky one who it reached such a high fever pitch that he was eventually let go. But they're still trying to take him down with bullshit cases through lawfare. This is actual lawfare. Not the shit they did on Trump. That's actually trying to go after a criminal. This is real lawfare. That's what this is. And so he was one of the lucky ones. Think of all these other innocent people who are they want to send 30,000 people to Gitmo. 30,000 people to Gitmo. They're going to send thousands of people to Alligator Alcatraz in the Florida Everglades surrounded by fucking alligators and snakes. Really what that is alligator Auschwitz. By the way, it already fucking flooded because of one thunderstorm it flooded. Hurricane comes through there, you're going to have mass death. So understand what we're witnessing here. Understand what we're witnessing here. This has to stop. It has to stop. You need to arrest these people. You need to lock them up. You need to bring back rule of law. You need to make sure nobody can torture. This is rogue regime shit, and it's fucking deplorable. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.